We got a 2016 GMC Sierra. We are replacing the engine. 5.3. Start by removing your hood. Next, remove this plastic trim, air intake. Get all these hoses, battery. Then we will discharge the AC system, drain the coolant, and then we will remove this crossbar that holds in the condenser, radiator, and the fan assembly. Pull all that out together. That gives you quite a bit of room to get these out. Yeah, after that, we start by pulling odds and end things off: starters, exhaust, wiring harnesses. But I will record what I have done. Alright, so pulled, as you can see, the front cover that was here, and just all you have to do, pull these little plastic things out of there, little push tabs. If you don't have the tool for it, you can use a flathead screwdriver. I like to pull the fuse box cover and put all my plastic stuff in there so I don't lose it. I pulled that. You see I pulled intake breather. My air box. The air box is just held in by these little grommets, so you can just pull up on it and it pops right out. But make sure you unplug the sensor, mass airflow sensor, before you pull it out. Also, there's these little to the PCV little tubes on each side of the breather. All you have to do is push up. Let's see, push up and pull. Same way on this one, except for this one's down. Push down, pull out, pops right off. You know, of course, you have two clamps. One that goes right here, and one to the air box. There's our 8 millimeters. And it just pops right off. When I do these, I just disconnect the battery, the ground, and then I just pull this whole battery fuse box, just because I don't want a chance of anything hitting or connecting while I'm taking this apart and shorting anything out or getting electrocuted or whatnot. But that's where I'm at so far. Next, also disconnected these coolant tubes. One goes to the radiator, the other one wraps around, goes through here, these little holders, and then goes to the top of the thermostat right here. And then of course, pull your hose from your overflow tank. Pull that off. Make sure you have a drip pan to catch all this stuff, unless you're doing it outside, but still a good idea to catch all your coolant. Next thing I'm gonna do is also, one thing I forgot is there's a little crossbar that goes from here to here. This little guy. Pull that off to get your pull your airbox out. Also, you have this bracket for the battery. Bolts to the other two crossbars. Pull that out. Next thing I'm gonna do is disconnect all my coolant hoses, my upper, my lower, and then I'm also going to disconnect my tranny cooler lines. Well, these are the little ones are your tranny cooler lines. The big ones are your oil cooler lines, but those need disconnected and just held in by a little. I'll show you how to get those out if you don't have the tool for it. I do have a tool for it, but if you don't have one, you can get them out with a pick, anything pointy and sharp that can pry up against there. There's 2, 3 on that side, and then there's one right here. It needs disconnected before you pull the whole assembly out. Of course, unplug your fans. Any line holders, pop those off of your assemblies. That's what I'm going to do next. And we'll be back. Alright, so I just pulled this front crossbar. Goes right here. That way you can pull this whole assembly out. So you don't have to remove your hood latch, but I like to just because it gives me a little bit of room to get this out. But you got this front bolt right here, bolts to here, 13 millimeter. And then, so I already got it off, I'll flip it around so you can kind of see where the other bolts are at. So you got your two 13 millimeters for your radiators. And then you have 1, 2, 3 10 millimeter bolts on each side that you have to get to under here. 1, 2, 3. Same over here. There's 1, 2, and 3. They're kind of in tight spaces. You can usually get this one and this one with a 10 millimeter wrench. This one you need, I like to use a 10 millimeter swivel socket if you can, with the extension. So you get the extension right up in there and just use a ratchet or whatever you got to get that bolt out. The other side's a little bit easier because you don't have the washer reservoir in the way. But there's that. And then next are all the hoses. Gotta come off so I can pull this complete assembly out. And then of course the AC lines also. So I've got to discharge the AC. Alright, so on the cooler lines and the tranny lines, I'm telling you, they have these little clips inside of them. And if you can get under edge right here. So I'll sharp like a pick. That, pop it up. Try to keep, while you have it, try to keep hold of it with your finger. That way you don't lose them. Oh, horseshoe clip. At least that's what I call them. But same way with the real clear lines, and the same ones, and just repeat that step for all of them. Bigger ones are easier, of course. Like I said, on the bigger ones, you can usually get in under one of these and push it up and then grab it. But make sure you try to keep a hold of them when you're pulling them out, so you don't lose them. You can buy more at your parts store in like a little package. They also have a little tool. It's like a disconnect tool. It slides in here and pushes them out. And that way you can pull the lines out. Not everybody has that tool, so this works. Pick or something pointy. I finished taking the rest of these off, discharging the AC, and then I'll show you after I have the complete assembly out. Alright, so got the complete assembly out. See how much room that gives you. You gotta disconnect the AC lines from after you discharge it. Disconnect 13mm nut, and then radiator, or 13mm nut right there. And after you get all of your lines disconnected, so you got 1, 2, 3 on the passenger side, and then you have 1 on the driver's side at the bottom of the radiator. This one you do not need to take out, or that one. So, got hoses disconnected, lines disconnected. Next, I'll do my heater core lines right here. You see it there? Try to see if I can show it. Looks like it might be leaking and need replaced. Those, you will need a disconnect tool for those. Remove those, and then, of course, you're gonna disconnect all your wiring to it. And right here, and here, pull all this off, and you have to your vacuum, you got a line to your vacuum pump for your brakes. Pull your ground strap disconnect this wiring harness. It's just plastic push tabs. You can pry on it right there. It goes down around here. Right there. This is for your power steering. Disconnect your other ground strap right there. And then make sure you take all your connectors off. Got that one. You got the other one right there. And also, this harness goes up, down, down, and it's connected to your O2 sensors. I like to get everything loose and out of the way. The more stuff that's out of your way, the easier it is to get out. You don't have to fight with it. I'd rather do it now and not have to fight with anything than have to fight with something in the middle of pulling it. Another thing on these is you have stretch belts. One to your vacuum pump, one to your AC. Vacuum pump's really easy because you can just zip tie the belt to it and then just turn the motor over and it'll pop right back on. The AC one is a little more difficult if you don't have the right tool. They do make a tool for them. But the way I do it is I'll disconnect all my AC lines, connectors. You got this nut, and you have this bolt. And I like to take the bolt out first, and then the nut. And then you can also, if you want, pull this stud. It's a 7mm, I believe. And that way you can just turn the AC compressor and the belt will pop right off. Putting it on, a little bit more difficult if you don't have the tool. You can get it on there. Sometimes you can do the same thing like with that, with the vacuum pump, lining on your harmonic balancer, and then zip tie it. Put it on your AC compressor first, zip tie it. The only thing that is when you're putting it on is it'll get caught on this first one. So you can either put something over it, or the way I do it is I'll put it on the crank pulley first, and I'll put it on here, and then I'll kind of pry or push the AC against it until I can line up the bolts. And I'll start one of these bolts just to get it kind of straight, and then I'll push the rest of it together. But that's for later. I won't worry about that right now. Yeah, so finished pulling the rest of my lines, hoses, wiring harness, and then I will lift it up, disconnect my exhaust, my starter, and then torque converter bolts, and then the last thing I will do is my engine mount bolts. There. And Also, one more thing that I do is take out this intermediate shaft right here. It will get hung up on that. Just make sure your steering wheel's straight, or put some marks on them to make sure it goes back the way it came in. I will be back when I get everything ready. When I move underneath the truck, and show you what I do from there. Alright, so this is where I'm at. Got all the lines off. Gotta find my tool for these, but while I was waiting for all that, pulled the intake, pulled your little foam piece that's in here. That way you can disconnect all this stuff in here. Your high pressure fuel pump. You don't have to disconnect your fuel line. And then you have a evap line right there. So disconnect that line. That's what runs from here to here. Disconnect that. Disconnect all your ignition coils. And then on the back you have that ground and that ground. And you have to take out your tranny dipstick tube. And then, like I said, move that intermediate shaft. And you see I removed the vacuum hose from the booster to the pump. It's right there. That's that one right there. You just push those tabs out and it presses down and it pulls out. It's really easy. Next, I'm gonna get the tool to disconnect those hoses. I'm gonna disconnect the fuel lines. Get the ground straps off the back. Then after that, I will probably lift it up and start getting everything underneath and go from there. All right, so you can see it moved underneath. Now disconnect the converters, the manifold. If you have a welder, I just cut them and get them out of the way. You don't necessarily have to take them off, but sometimes they get hung up on the manifolds, so I have to get them out of the way. Now, if you don't have a welder, you don't need to do this, but take out the starter. It's right there. And of course you got your knock sensor. You gotta take your ground off. And you have a crank sensor there that you have to unplug. And then oil level sensor right there. And then just disconnect this harness. So like the little, you see, and these are your trans lines. These are held in with a 10mm bolt right behind. Let's see if I can get it right there. A little bracket, 10mm bolt. And then pull the harness off the front right here. Disconnect this connector right there underneath the vacuum pump. Right here. Disconnect everything from your AC compressor. Then I also took out, if you have 4-wheel drive, front drive shaft, only because it's easier to get to these bolts that are to your oil cooler lines. You have to disconnect these. Then you got your other knock sensor. And then that's pretty much it for wiring and lines. Then of course you just take out your bell housing bolts right there. And then I'm also gonna disconnect, that's for your training dipstick tube, so take that off, pull your dipstick tube and get it out of your way. You will lose a little bit of training fluid, but go ahead, keep measurement of how much you lost, that way you know how much to put back in. But that nut is, I believe, a 13, and then the rest are 15s. And so don't forget to disconnect this breather hose right here. If you can see that, but breather hose. Don't forget to disconnect that. And I also went ahead and took this bolt out that holds the fuel lines and all of that. So it's just easier to maneuver out of the way when you take it off up top. And remove this plastic cover. Then you'll have your torque converter bolts. Take those out. Of course, I believe it's a 24 millimeter. Oh. And this was the electrical harness that came down. You got O2 sensor right there, and then your other O2 sensor right here. And I'll just pull this whole wiring harness up, get it out of my way. Of course, you can see it's connected to that wire right there. Your ground strap, which we can disconnect it from that. And then pull this whole harness up. And then you'll have the harness that runs up on this side after you disconnect the knock sensor and the ground strap right there. Everything will push to the driver's side out of your way. And then you get all that, your bell housing bolts and your torque converter bolts. It's ready to pull. And it will clear the front diff. That's why I take the intake off and the radiator and all that. Just give it enough room, that way you don't have to mess with the diff. But another thing I like to do when I'm getting ready to pull this and I lower it down, I'll put something underneath the trans pan, you know, a wooden block with either a jack stand or an extra jack, just to keep it from dropping all the way down. I mean, if it does, it will just sit on your sway bar, but I don't want to put that much pressure on everything. So, all right, I will get back when I have everything out and ready to pull. All right, so Motor is out. You are able to get it out through the top. You just gotta watch. You see where I scratched it up a little bit right there. And watch your wiring harness. Don't forget your ground strap. But it is out. Honestly, the biggest pain was separating it from the transmission because these dowels are so rusted and corroded. But just be patient and it will come out. Best ways, I usually use a flathead screwdriver. And there's a little gap right here. Pop one up there and try to get one around the other sides. If you have a you can pre-soak it with some PB Blaster or something of that sort. Let it soak for a little bit. That might help you. Or just use a little bit of heat around them on the tranny. She is out. And there's the new, well, I wouldn't say new, but there's the new one. This one is a 15. This one is a 19 that we're putting in. I think there's something different about the fuel rail, maybe. At least that's what they said when they shipped it to us. So I'll find out as soon as I pull the intake off if it's any different than this one, which I don't see why it would be, but I guess we'll find out.